You have probably had this experience more than once. Someone is talking to you, their voice is right there in the room, but the words arrive soft and blurred, like they are speaking just slightly below the threshold where things make sense. So you lean in, concentrate harder, ask them to repeat themselves, and even when they do, you still feel like you only caught about 80% of what they said. Most people quietly land on one of two explanations. Either the people around them have gotten lazier about speaking clearly, or they themselves were just distracted at that moment. Both feel reasonable enough to stick with, so they do. And weeks turn into months, and the whole thing just becomes the new normal. But when speech sounds soft or unclear, even at a normal volume, it's often an early sign of a very specific and common change in how your hearing processes sound. But what if this isn't just about people mumbling or you losing focus? What if there's a pattern behind it that most people miss? Stick with me till the end and I'll break down what's actually going on and why it tends to show up this way first. To understand why this happens, it helps to know a little about how your inner ear works, because it is genuinely fascinating and it explains a lot. Deep inside your ear, in a small spiral-shaped structure called the cochlea, there are thousands of tiny sensory cells called hair cells. These are not actual hairs, but they get their name from microscopic bristle-like structures on their surface that respond to sound vibrations. When sound enters your ear, it travels through the cochlea and causes these hair cells to move. And that movement gets converted into electrical signals that travel to your brain and become the sounds you hear and understand. Here's the critical part. The cochlea is not one uniform structure. It is organized so that different sections respond to different frequencies of sound. High-pitched sounds are processed near the entrance of the cochlea, and lower-pitched sounds are processed deeper inside. And the hair cells that sit near that entrance, the ones responsible for high-frequency sounds, are smaller and more fragile than the ones deeper in. Research from the National Institute on Deafness consistently shows that these high-frequency hair cells are the first to be affected by the cumulative effects of noise exposure and the natural passage of time. They begin to deteriorate gradually over the years, and unlike most cells in the body, once they are damaged, they do not regenerate or repair themselves. So over time, a very specific portion of your hearing quietly begins to go. Not all of it, just the top layer of it. Now here's where it gets really important to understand, because this is the part that explains the whispering sensation specifically. The sounds in human speech are not all at the same frequency. They occupy a range. And crucially, the sounds that carry the most meaning in spoken words, the consonants, sit almost entirely in the higher frequency range. Sounds like S, F, T, TH, SH, and K all live between roughly 2,000 and 8,000 hertz, which is exactly the range those fragile high-frequency hair cells are responsible for. Vowels like A, E, I, O, and U are a different story. They are loud, low-pitched, and tend to be processed by the hair cells deeper in the cochlea, which stay intact for much longer, so your ears continue to hear them clearly. You hear that a sentence is being said. But without the consonants, the words lose their definition entirely. The sentence, "I asked Skip if he felt sick," starts to sound like a series of vowel shapes with nothing connecting them. The volume sounds normal, but the clarity is gone. That is exactly why speech feels like whispering, even when it is not. It is not that everything got quieter. It is that the sharp, high-pitched detail layer of speech has faded, and what remains sounds soft and indistinct by nature. There are some very specific patterns that tend to show up early as this happens, and they are worth knowing about because most people experience them for quite a long time before connecting them to what is actually going on. Women's voices and children's voices tend to become harder to follow before men's voices do, simply because they naturally sit in a higher pitch range. So you might find yourself following a conversation with one person just fine while struggling significantly more with someone else, and the difference feels random or situational rather than like a consistent pattern. High-pitched environmental sounds also start to fade. Bird calls, the ding of a microwave, the beep of a smoke detector, the higher notes in music. These often disappear so gradually that most people simply stop noticing they are missing them at all. And words that differ only in their consonants start to become genuinely confusing. Research from the NIDCD gives a striking example of this. Consonant-heavy words collapse into each other when those sounds are missing. Think about how similar first and thirst sound if the F fades, or bat, cat, sat, and fat when the opening consonant blurs into nothing. Your brain does its best to guess from context which word was intended, but in a fast conversation, that effort adds up quickly. One of the most interesting things about this kind of hearing change is how effectively people adapt without realizing it. You start watching faces more carefully, paying closer attention to context and body language, getting better at predicting what someone is about to say. It works well enough most of the time that you genuinely do not feel like your hearing has changed. You just feel like people have gotten mumblier. Research on hearing help seeking consistently shows that the average person waits somewhere between 7 and 10 years from when these changes first start affecting daily life before actually doing anything about it. And the reason for that delay is almost never avoidance. It is genuinely hard to notice a gradual change from the inside when your brain is doing such a good job of compensating for it. Quietly adapting to speech that sounds softer and less clear than it used to takes a real toll. On conversations, on confidence, and on the energy it costs just to follow a dinner table discussion that everyone else seems to track without any effort. But once you recognize it as a clarity change, rather than people mumbling or you losing focus, you stop guessing. And you can actually make a decision based on the right information. The sooner you act on that, the more you get back. Head to the description where I have linked Hear Direct Club's Nova, built for exactly this kind of everyday clarity gap without the clinic appointments or the costs most people expect. Use code YT10 for 10% off. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe, because we are putting out practical guides to help you stay sharp and connected.